Okay, we are live. Let's do this. So here's the project that we're going to work through today. This is simulating the spread of coronavirus. So we've got the main spheres, the blue and the pink spheres, and these are, the blue ones are our non-infected people, and the pink ones, these are those that are infected. And you can see that when they come close contact with other balls nearby them, they start to spread the infection. Zip it back. You also see there's these kind of little soapy bubbles going on. That's to simulate the kind of sneeze, coughing particles of someone who's infected, and that's a separate system. So what you've got going on here, these look like spheres which you would get in C4D in the simulation, like, you know, kind of MoGraph or simulation dynamics on the spheres, but actually it's not. This is a particle system. And in the position of the particles, we've got physical geometry. We've got spheres, which is driven by redshift. We're going to show you how to do that in a different tutorial. For today, we're going to concentrate on how we do the simulation in XPparticles. Another thing to note here is it looks kind of like the balls are rolling on the surface, but really that's not the case. What's happening is the balls are just sliding across the surface. Because we don't have any features on the balls, there's no kind of texture on the ball. It's just a shiny surface on the ball. You get away with that. You don't see that they're not rolling. And that's one way that we were able to get away with using a particle system, because using a particle system then opens up all of the other simulation sort of techniques that we're going to need to do this. Okay, so let's jump on into Cinema 4D. First thing, let's get an XP system in there, and by default you get a emitter, a rectangle emitter, and it chucks out a load of particles like that from the rectangle. Just going to go in the XP system and get rid of that icon in viewport. What we want to do is create a plane and use this plane to emit from, and we can drop that plane into other objects, and in the emitter tab here, go to the object tab, emit a shape. We want to choose object and then drag that plane in. And we don't want to emit from the polygon center. We're going to use the points. To see that better, I'm going to go Gurad shade in lines, and let's run that, see what happens. Cool, so you can see now it's emitting from all the points on the object. I'm going to, on the plane, if we increase the subdivision, it'll now emit from more points. There it is, all going up. I'm going to just change the display here. We can change the display to spheres in our editor, and I'm going to change the particle color to the convention that we had where we've got blue for the non-infected particles. Okay, there we go. Now they're all flying up. We don't want that, and one way that we can change that is if we go into modifiers, motion modifiers, we want XP limit, and we can limit certain things. This is the X, Y, and Z axis. We want to 100% limit the movement in the Y direction so that they will start emitting, except for that one there. There we go. They're all limited now in the Y direction. Few things still need to change. We don't want them emitting as a rate. We want to change that rate to a shot. So it's going to emit, frame number 1, a shot of 1,000 particles. The other thing we want to check is where it says no intersection. We want to check that. Okay, getting a bit closer. Let's add a 0 on there. Okay, cool. That is looking good, but we still got a couple of spots here. Let's ramp that number up. Lovely. In the emitter here, in the emission tab, I'm going to change that radius to 15. There we go, that's better. I'm also going to hide our plane. Hold down Alt so it highlights both of those lights at the same time. Sweet. Okay, now we've managed to emit the particles, but there's no movement, and that's because the emitter does have speed, so the particles should emit out with some speed, but we're limiting 100% in the Y direction. So anything that's trying to go up, it's limited. What we can do here now is in the motion modifiers, if we add a turbulence, going to change that to wavy, we should now get them moving around. So they're going way too quick. We also don't need the turbulence on the Y-axis. We just need it on the X and Z. So we don't need anything moving upwards. If we bring the strength down to 1, okay, still too much movement. We can go to the emission tab, change the speed. Let's take a 0 off that. Okay, that's looking a bit better. Let's get a bit more, a few more frames on the timeline. A good tip is you can keep on playing with the emitter speed to get the look that you want, but what's really nice is the XP limit. You can limit the speed in the other data tab, limit other data, choose speed, clip higher values, and let's set that to 40. Okay. And the other thing I'm going to change here is the scale on the turbulence. If I bring that down a little bit, they're going to move in a more confined sort of zone area. So that's feeling a little bit more like sort of milling around of people. At this point now, we want to get some collisions running on these particles. They're not colliding into each other. And in XP, that's really easy. You just go dynamics. Where is it? XPppcollisions. That's the one we want. Zoom in a bit. Okay, there we go. Colliding in perfectly. It's really fast. If you tried to do this with dynamics and C4D, I don't think it'd be this quick. You could try with a cloner, render instances, and all of that, but I don't think it's as quick as XP. What you don't get, however, is any rolling, but we don't need that. We don't need the balls to roll because they're all shiny. Right, let's have a look now at how we get the infection propagating through the group. So into our modifiers tab again. It's a control modifier we need, and it's called Infectio. So we'll choose that, put it in, run it from the start, see what happens, and we don't have anything yet. And that's because we need to add a new seed object. A seed object is like anything in this area, in this volume, is going to be an infected particle. So if we run that again now, we've got the red particles saying I'm infected. But we run it and it stops. It kind of goes, watch it again, propagates through, but it stops. So what we need to change is in the Infectio tab, this search for nearest once, we need to uncheck that. So when a particle becomes infected, it keeps on searching through its lifetime. Let's run that. Okay. So the infection keeps on spreading, which is what we want, but it's a bit quick. And that is controlled by this search radius here. 100 mil at the moment. Let's bring that down to 50. So when they become closer to each other, they're going to start infecting. And that's more true to life, right? If you get within a certain radius of someone, you might catch a cough or sneeze. That's how this virus is doing its stuff. Few other things we need to sort. This seed object remains active for its lifetime, and anything that comes in the area becomes infected. I can show this. If I drag this around, you can see anything in its volume becomes infected. We don't really want that. I'm just going to go one frame on here. We just want it to affect one ball. So there it comes in, it affects that ball, and we can keyframe it off and on. So we put a keyframe there at frame number 1 to say I'm enabled. Hit G on the keyboard to go on one more frame. Uncheck enabled. Keyframe it, and then the seed object is gone. So it's just there for a split second to infect that ball, and then it's gone out of our scene. Okay, looking good. So we've got the infection running. At this point, our director said to us, Okay, I want more people infected in the scene, but just sort of a bit further, different places, further away. Can you do that? And that's quite easy. So one frame on, all I've got to do is click and drag, holding Control on my seed object, and we can set off new infections at different points from the start of the scene. And there we go. We've got sort of a wider spread of infection from the get-go. All well and good. Now at this point, Director said, that's brilliant, thank you. Can we have sneezy particles coming out of the infected ones? So we said, yep, we can do that, we think. And the way to do that is spawn modifier. So I'll put a spawn modifier in, which I think is in the generate modifiers, spawn. Okay, and when you put spawn modifier in, it needs an emitter. And you can hit this button here, add spawn in emitter, and it's going to drop in an emitter here. I'm just going to tidy this up. This is like spawning stroke sneezy particles. And this original one here, non-infected. I'm also going to display, let's give that the blue color, sorry, the pink color. That's spawning sneezy ones. I want that to be pink. So I've changed the wrong thing there. I want that one. So we can see that it's pink. And the non-infected, we want the icon color in the HUD to be blue. Okay, good. Okay, so we've got spawning happening now. But the spawning is happening on every single particle, and we don't want that. We only want it to happen on any particle that's infected. So at this point we need some groups. So let's create a group. We're going to need 3. The first one that we're going to use is non-infected. Next group we need is infected, and the final group is going to be spawning stroke sneezy. And these groups will allow us to set certain controls within anything that's adjoined to that group can have its own set of controls. Non-infected, we're going to make that blue. These two can have the pink. Okay, good. Now in the spawn modifier, we can say only affect the infected group. So only spawn from something that's infected. That's what you're saying by doing that. And what we also need to do is in our original emitter, we want to say to that emitter in the groups tab that you are part of the infected. By default, you are part of the non-infected group. Let's give that a go. So the first thing you notice, and this will happen all the time when you use groups, is the spheres that we had before are gone and have been replaced by dots, and you always think, oh god, got a glitch, something's gone wrong. But it's just because this is now dominating the controls. So we need to go back in here and the editor display, we need to change the spheres again. Same with infected. And the spawning sneezy, we will change that to filled circles. Let's have a look. Okay, so we've got our spheres back, but again, within the groups, it's got a default value of 30 for the radius, where we changed that to 15 before. So we need to reset that in here, back to 15. And for the spawning sneezy, we're going to set that to 1. Okay, good. Now we're back to where we were. We don't seem to be having any spawning going on. And the reason for that is because at the moment there's only non-infected particles in the scene. These red particles, they're technically infected, but they are the only thing that the Infectio module is doing is changing its color. So we need to like physically have that do something to the particle, not just change its color, but to change its group. We want to change it from non-infected into the infected group, and then we can start spawning from it. So to do that, in the Infectio object here, where it says color mode, we want no color change. And then next to general, you can go into the actions tab, and in here we can set an action once a particle has become infected. So this is what we want to do. We want to hit this button here, add action. The action type that we want is a direct action. And the direct action that we want to have happen is for it to change group. So when it becomes infected, we can change its group. Here where it says new group, we want to say change yourself to infected. And now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, we've got something happening. This is starting to work now. So we've got sneezy particles coming out of the infected ones. I'm also just gonna, in the Infectio, I'm just gonna turn the color change on so we can see it happening. General, fixed value, there we go. It's going mental. Spawn, we've got so much spawning going on here. We just need to change that down to about 10. Keep that chilled. Okay, that's better. Now we've got a problem here in that the XPppcollisions is happening on everything, but we only want the XPppcollisions to happen on the blue and the pink spheres. So we can say only affect the non-infected group and only infect the infected group, which means that those spawning sneezy ones that are getting emitted from the particle, you're not affected. There we go. Okay, looking good. Starting to get there. In the group here, spawning sneezy. Yeah, we need to drop the groups to use on spawning sneezy. We need to use spawning sneezy. That's good. And then we can also, in the display tab, let's just make those a little bit bigger so we can see them a bit better. Okay. Getting closer. Okay, in the Infectio module now, we need to have a look at the colors and how the color changes over life. So we need to take the color mode off. We're now not going to see a color change when they hit. Yes, we do, sorry. We see a color change, but it's instant. And what we want to do, if we go back to the video, is you can see that when the particle becomes affected, its color changes over time. It's more of a gradual change, okay? Let's watch that again. And they bump into each other and it's gradual, it's smooth. For this now, if we go back into Infectio, in our actions tabs, we want to add another action on infection. So hit the add action button. And the action type is a control modifier action. And that control modifier should be a color modifier. Okay, now it's asking for a color modifier here to use. We need to create one. So back into modifiers, control modifier, XPcolor. And now back in our Infectio color modifier action, we can XPcolor, we can change that in. Okay, not quite what we want yet. We need to change the settings here in this XPcolor modifier. It's action controlled, which is what we want. That's exactly how we want it. Normally it would start off as independent, but because we've set up the color modifier here, it's gone to action controlled, exactly what we want. Set color, this needs to be time dependent. Okay, and now it will give us a gradient. And this is where we're going to go from blue to pink. So what we need to do is pick out that color, copy, and the XP color, we need to paste that in there. Okay, and then in the infected group, we need to copy that pink and color modifier, double click, paste it in there. Bob's your monkhouse. Cool. This is the time to completion, 90 frames. Let's ramp that down to like 40. So once they bump into each other, zoom in a bit, see that better. They start to gradually change. Now, I'm just going to run this again. You should be able to see a little glitch happening on the particles. When the very first frame, when they bump, they just flash into that pink color. And there's a reason for this. In change group action, in the change group action, we want to untick the color. What's happening is, just for a frame, this color is jumping in and changing it to pink very quickly as it becomes infected, and then the XP color module is taking over. So if we uncheck that, we shouldn't get that. Okay, looking good. I'm going to save this. Be disastrous if I lost it. What next? What next? We're looking good, but we do need to change some things. Let's have a look at the XP scale modifier. With the sneezy particles, you'll see that the style of them, when they come to life, they start off small, then go big, and then go small again. So they kind of come in big and then zip down to 0. I'll show you how we do that. In the modifiers tab, Control XP scale. Groups affected. We only want this to affect the spawning sneezy ones. And when you, by default, what they'll do is they'll just get bigger over time. And in the modifier, we can change that to, so parameter change particle radius, that is what we want. But the operation, we want to use a spline. Now we can use this spline to say start off small, get big, and then finish off small. Okay, not too bad, but what's happening is the life of these particles are just going on forever. So we need to set a life for these particles, and that's done in our spawning sneezy emitter, emission, full lifespan. We can change that to say 30. Okay, not looking too bad. Display, I'm just going to tweak this down. Okay, good. Not too bad. Now looking at this from the side angle and comparing this to the reference, one of the issues here is we've got particles emitting top and bottom, and if these were rendered, these would be kind of emitting on the floor plane and stuff like that. We don't want that. Go back to the video. The particles are kind of emitting from the center point of the sphere and staying within that level, within that kind of Y height. They're not moving up or down from that position. And the way that we did that is with the kill modifier. So modifiers, control, kill. And what this says is basically kill any particles that are in a certain area. And you can drive that using objects. So I'm going to bring a cube in. Let's see this from the side. This one. Yeah. And bring that down like that. Bring that to there. And what we're going to say is anything within this cube volume will get killed on birth. And then if I click Control and drag, I'll create another cube. Let's just go to the start so you can see that better. So we've got cube here, finishing there. Cube above it, finishing there. Zip on one frame. So it's confining any emission to those points. Let's just tighten up that a little bit. And now we need to, in the kill modifier, in the settings, we need to change the shape to, oh sorry, the volume to objects. And click and drag those objects in. And also in the modifier, we want it in the groups effect to say you're only going to kill the spawning sneezy particles. You can drag that into other objects and hide them, right? Zoom out a bit. Save. Okay, not looking too bad. We're getting this funny glitch. I don't know if you can see this. Let's go from the start again, have a look. See these little kind of almost like fireflies. It's firing off. No idea why that's like that. Maybe someone from Insidium, XPppcollisions watching can let us know. But we can, if we just tweak a few things. How did we fix this? I think in the spawning sneezy one, emission. Sorry, it's in this spawn object. Direction relative to source particle direction. Change that. That will help, I think. Yeah. I think that means that fewer are getting emitted in the kill zone. And there we go. That wraps it up for the simulation. That's pretty much ready to be now rendered. There's probably a few more tweaks, but I think we'll leave that now. Thanks for watching. I hope you've got something useful out of this. There's lots in it with application for other things. Next time when we come back, it's probably going to be on Friday this week. We're going to look at how we lit and rendered this. We'll probably, there is another scene which we're going to probably have a look at showing people. For the light and rendering one, we'll use this scene we did where the director asked us to demonstrate how, you know, keeping a 2 meter radius means that you can't get infected by the particles. And this has also got some nice stuff in, this is driven by MoGraph and dynamics and a little bit of Espresso. There's also some comping we can look at inside of After Effects about how we get these 4 lines here. That's a 3D object. So these 4 lines here, that's actually 3D rendered in Redshift. But this single white line was put in Adobe After Effects afterwards, along with this line here and the 2 meters and that sort of motion graphics. We'll look at that. We'll look at how we lit and rendered these particles. And we'd also look at the dynamics in C4D. Thanks for watching. That's it from me. Stay safe wherever you are. Cheers. Bye.